We're sorry, your price is just too high. If this sounds familiar, make sure you stay tuned. Today we're going to talk about the best tips to overcome objections. Step one, we need to acknowledge the objection. Now this doesn't mean you have to agree with the objection, say, oh yes, the price is too high. My point is you want to make sure you acknowledge what the person said. Worst thing you can do when somebody raises an objection is to talk over them or to completely ignore them. So acknowledge the objection. Say something like, I understand that that's a concern for you. Or you've raised a good question. So we want to acknowledge that we've heard what they said, and you can even repeat back to them what the objection is. So if it's a pricing objection, you can say, I understand you believe the price is too high, but let me explain something, or let me share some additional insight. Or if you really want to be provocative, you can follow up with something else I'll talk to you in a minute about. So step one, acknowledge the objection. Step two, before you transition into actually responding, pause for a moment. Here's why. When there is a pause, when there is silence, it gives the perception that you're thinking. Now, the reality is you probably are thinking about, what am I going to say next? What can I say here that's going to keep this conversation moving forward? However, a pause suggests to your prospect or to your buyer that you're considering what they've said. And in a way you are, but it's going to increase their hopes that you're going to give them what they want. So if somebody raises a pricing objection and you say, I understand that you're concerned about the pricing. So there's step one, the acknowledgement, and then I pause. It doesn't have to be a long pause. I would suggest you count to 3 slowly. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. And then you respond to that in the next step. So make sure you use that pause. Don't be nervous. Give yourself time to think and let them believe that you're really considering how you can make this work, because in a way you are. The next step in addressing objections is to ask a closed-ended question. I gave you earlier an acknowledgement statement you can use. So let's use the common objection of price. Somebody says, I'd love to work with you. It looks great. Price is too high. Step one, we acknowledge. I understand you think the price is too high. Pause for a moment. And then we ask a closed-ended question. And the reason for this is to drive the conversation in a direction. So one of my favorite used to be this. If we can set a price today that meets your objectives, would you be willing to move forward? That really drives a simple answer, right? It's either yes or no. There's not much in between. They could elaborate a bit, but chances are it's a yes or no. So that closed-ended question tells you, are there other objections here they haven't told us about, which is often the case, right? They share an initial objection, you can't deliver this fast enough for me, right? Or, we just don't think this is the best fit for what we need right now. Or the price is too high. By asking a closed-ended question, what we're trying to uncover here is, before we get into trying to solve the objection, are there other objections that exist? So a closed-ended question such as, if we could solve blank today for you, would you be willing to move forward? That's when they may respond with, well, actually, there's something else. And that allows you to understand the full scope of the objection so that you can respond accordingly and move into the next step. Now let's take this next step, which is really, I call it options, okay? So if you ask a closed-ended question, let's use the pricing example, it's pretty familiar to us all, right? You say, if we can resolve and find a price today that matches your budget, would you be willing to proceed? I stop talking, wait a moment, they're gonna respond. If they say yes, now what they're telling me is there's no other objections, so now I can deal with that objection, and I wanna provide options in how we deal with it. So I might say, well, we've got options where we could move these payments out over a longer term. We could, of course, remove some of the value, some of the concepts, some of the volume, some of the quantity of this proposal to reduce the price, right? It really depends on what you're selling, but you can always reduce something on there to reduce the price. So we're gonna come back with options, 2 or 3, no more than 3, no less than 2, right? So 2 or 3 that really give them a series of selections that they can make, right? They could say, well, you know what, if you could just reduce the quantity, that will work well for me. Or if we can slow down these payment terms, that's going to help me out. So this is where we kind of branch off. If they say no, it isn't, they say, what else would we need to address in order to move forward today? So notice I'm circling right back to my question. So what I'm trying to do now is pull out the objections. So if they say yes, if we deal with the pricing issue, or yes, if we deal with the delivery issue, whatever the objection was, then you want to give them options for how you can achieve that. If they say no, then we simply ask, what else, is a concern? They share it. Then you repeat your question. We get into a loop here. You say, okay, if we can resolve this and that, would you be willing to move forward today? And then if they say yes, you go back to options, okay? So you'll see the structure here. It starts to really become clear. Acknowledge, pause, right? Once we pause, we want to ask that closed-ended question, which really drives the direction. Depending on their response, if it's yes, that tells us this is the only objection. We give them options. If they say no, we clarify, we go back to the start again. We acknowledge that we've understood, we've heard them. pause for a moment, ask our closed-ended question again to try and get them to a yes. At that moment, we give them those options again that they can move forward with, okay? Now this is key to making sure you've closed off the objection, and I call it the resolution, okay? So if we've gone through this loop and maybe you've flushed out one objection, provided some options, they've made a choice, maybe there's a couple objections you've uncovered. The goal is here is to keep this going. Don't book the next meeting. Resolve it in the moment, and that's where the resolution comes in. So once they've said yes, then you simply repeat back what you've agreed to. So let's assume it was a pricing issue, and we said we can reduce the quantity, and we can spread payment terms out, and this person says, yes, that'll be helpful. My resolution would simply be, so I've understood initially you had some concerns around pricing. We've agreed, that's key language here, we've agreed that if we can reduce the quantity and change the payment terms to those we've discussed, you're ready to proceed. That's the kind of language you want to use. Then you move into the closing statement, which is, let me revise this proposal. I'll have it back to you today. We'll get started immediately. And then again, you go into whatever your contractual obligation is. Do you need them to sign for you? Is a deposit good enough, or you just go ahead on their word? And again, that's going to depend on your own company policy. So there's a practice you can use to deal with objections. Fairly simple, okay? You'll see a little bit more information on it below if you want to take this in and apply it, a little bit of a template you can follow in the outline here. And I'd encourage you to subscribe to this channel so you can make sure you see more of these kinds of videos, and comment below again on your best strategies. What works well for you in dealing with objections? Now, when it comes to improving your sales skills, there's a couple skills that I really want you to focus on. It's what the top performers really practice day in, day out. So make sure you watch this video next to learn more about how to improve your skills and how to become that top performing sales professional so you can earn more money in less time. And until next time, let's get out there, we'll go sell something. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.